Hey everyone, it's Matt here, UX design strategist at Content Square. Really sorry I couldn't be there in person today, but instead I'm here in beautiful, cloudy London. Don't be jealous. I couldn't get away with not sending you any information. Accessibility is a critical topic. So we put together this video. In this video, we're going to cover an overview of digital accessibility. We've got an exclusive interview with the accessibility specialist at ASOS. And to top it off, we've done a site audit, putting all that information into practice. But don't worry, we've also got a slide deck for you all as well, where we've got information, tips, advice, and resources that you can put into practice in your own time. So, let's do this.
Let's consider these facts. More than 1 billion people in the world have some type of impairment affecting their ability to read the web. 1 in 25 people have a visual impairment. 1 in 12 men are colorblind compared to 1 in 200 women. 1 in 10 have dyslexia. 1 in 11 are 65 plus today, and that's actually going to rise to 1 in 6 by 2050. So if we consider those numbers, around 70% of digital content's not actually accessible to them. So that's 80% of new sites and 2/3 of e-commerce websites. So if we think about the US now, specifically, it's around 61 million people have a disability. So that represents around 26% of adults, about 1 in 4. So if we do this on a national scale, these 61 million people could actually inhabit Italy, where their population's around 60 million. If we break it down a little bit further in terms of the different types of impairments, we're looking at around 12 million people who have a visual impairment. Approximately 48 million have some type of hearing impairment. Around 6.5 million have some form of cognitive or intellectual impairment. And then around 39 million have some form of physical impairment. So that's 1 in 7 adults that have difficulty walking, climbing stairs, and generally getting around. So with that in mind, what's the business case for accessibility? Why should we do it? Why should we help improve this experience for them? Well, if we do this, we're actually going to reach a wider audience. We're going to increase business impact and improve brand, and we're going to achieve compliance. So that means less lawsuits and getting sued. So a lot of things to consider. We're going to move over now. I'm going to have a chat with Sveta, the accessibility specialist at ASOS, where we're going to kind of delve more into this topic.
Hey, Sveta,
Hi.
accessibility specialist, ASOS. It's good to see you again. The last time we saw each other, CX Circle, London, back in May, where you joined us on our accessibility panel. Big hit. Everybody loved it. So it's great to have you back here again. How are you doing?
I loved it too. And thank you so much for having me again. It's great to be back.
A few questions today. Really just want to kind of get some of those nitty-gritty questions that people are typically wondering about. First one, it's very basic. It's quite a big question. We could probably talk about it for hours, but what is digital accessibility and what does it kind of mean to you?
That's actually a very good question. Digital accessibility looks at removing the barriers for all users, really. Users with disabilities who might have, more particular needs. And in removing those barriers in kind of the digital world, so that is any kind of digital content, websites, software, mobile apps, to allow those users to access all of that content and use that content without really needing anyone else's support, which we should all really be entitled to in our everyday life to be able to kind of navigate things independently.
I think something that I've experienced in my time when it comes to this question is, there's so many resources out there. It can be very overwhelming for people who are a little bit
Definitely
higher in the hierarchy and on larger pay grades. How are some ways that we could kind of articulate what accessibility is. So I've used plenty of examples before, like real life examples, in the kind of physical world of like, the electric toothbrush, for example. That was created for people with mobility issues. There's other things right now, like with e-readers that allow users to listen to books the day they're released, rather than waiting for someone to record an audiobook.
Yeah.
Is there anything like that you've done and spoken about in terms of kind of building that awareness?
A lot of the initial justifications for accessibility come from pure empathy. It's just about making everything accessible to everyone, which is what we want to do. But before going into the actual technical details of things, it's about the user. It's about the experience that the user has, and just having access to that experience and seeing it firsthand, I think helps a lot. And I've done that a couple of times now, and I find that to be kind of a really good conversation starter, as well as just a great kind of session for awareness.
So have you seen a positive impact on sales or conversion since implementing maintaining accessibility standards?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, I think, one of the main points of advice that I would give to anyone who's starting their accessibility journey, is to track the before and after, and just to keep an eye on those changes, because you will see changes. It's definitely easier to, particularly when we're talking about accessibility metrics, it's definitely easier to track those on native apps than it is on web, but it's not impossible to track them on web. You just have to be a little bit more creative. And I would definitely suggest for teams to kind of keep that in mind and set up dashboards or whatever works for you, because those numbers are then really good for your business case. They're really good to report back and to say, these are the changes that we've seen. We've acquired new customers. We've retained more customers. And just to match those to, whatever KPIs or OKRs or whatever else your kind of wider company goals are. Because ultimately this is what you want to do. You want to align your accessibility efforts with the efforts of the whole company, and that is a great way to do it. So tracking does exist, it's out there. You just have to kind of be mindful and start doing it early on to be able to see those numbers grow. What
about kind of more of the visual design side of things then? Like, we see issues with color contrasting on multiple websites, where users with visual impairments can go on and they might struggle to read that CTA, they might struggle to read that link, anything like that. Is there anything there in terms of maybe like, A/B testing? Kind of, you've got the poor color contrasting design, and then you've got the design where it's kind of been corrected, maybe noticing the difference in the two there.
I mean, with contrast specifically, I think because the rules are so clear, any kind of design that goes onto production, whether that's a test or something that you just want to definitely have on there, I think it should definitely meet contrast levels for sure. I'm really surprised, as you said, to the amount of websites that still have poor contrast, because there's so many automated testing tools out there that can really easily point out those problems. They might not be very good at other areas, but specifically when it comes to contrast, it's really easy to catch that. But whenever I see poor contrast, it makes me think that probably the design teams weren't trained in kind of positive accessibility practices. And I think that's very important, because the design team is where everything sort of starts, right? So I think as much as you can use, automated tools, I think it's important that you catch those in the design phase before it even gets discussed or gets, anyone starts building.
Again, there's plenty of great tools out there. Color contrast analyzer, there's one of my favorites, Pika. It's very simple to install and download and use you know, and you can kind of then go through and check things instantly and get things changed.
And I think a lot of these things you get for free. So,
Absolutely.
you know, with stuff that you already get for free, just go and make use of that. And, you know, it will give you suggestions, it will give you tips. I think it's a great way to get started, even if you're not doing any other accessibility work already.
Yeah.
In terms of kind of maintaining, you know, relationships with people, I think it all starts with that initial conversation, explaining what accessibility is, why is it important, and then going into looking at that particular team's work and where accessibility applies in their workflow, and just making sure that they have a very clear checklist. They know exactly what they need to be looking for. Even if there is an overlap with, say, another team, everyone should kind of have their little responsibilities, go through their checklist, make sure that they haven't missed something. That way you have a few kind of different levels of almost like QAing your work for accessibility.
I like that,
And people, in my experience, they sort of start like having those discussions between themselves. So they don't always involve the accessibility specialist. They start kind of discussing that in their own conversations. And if someone has made a mistake or didn't check something properly, the other team might end up catching it and actually, you know, going back and kind of making those changes. So I think that's really valuable for everyone to know what their responsibilities are. Start there, you know, explain everything very clearly, and then just keep checking in. Like I, for instance, at least once a year run the same type of training for, you know, teams that don't kind of sit in my area, that are a little bit further away from me, that I might not have daily interactions with. Because, you know, the reality is there will be new people might have forgotten about things, you want a refresher, you want to kind of keep checking in, and you also want people to feel comfortable asking questions. I think accessibility can sometimes be one of those kind of intimidating buzzwords, and I really don't want it to be that. I want people to be, you know, feel free to say, I don't understand, I don't know what this is, why are we doing this? There's no shame in asking questions.
It's funny that you say that. I remember like last year and almost kind of the start of this year, the term like accessibility was labeled as a hot topic. It's the hottest topic of the year. Like, and I was just like, oh no, this not a hot topic of the year as well. You know, it kind of makes it this kind of limited,
as if it's a passing thing.
It's a passing thing,
which it isn't. But at the same time, I think there's pros and cons to that. I think more people are talking about accessibility, which ultimately gives them the chance to learn more about it and for more people to hear about it. I completely disagree with the idea that it's just a passing thing and you know, it will be forgotten, because I think, if anything, all the accessibility work that's happening in the past few years is just showing us that this field is growing, and that eventually it will sort of merge into, you know, product management and design and development. But I think right now, because there's so little awareness, it is kind of its own separate thing, and eventually it will just kind of grow, I think, naturally into other roles.
Is there anything you kind of do in terms of like trainings, education, empathy labs, you know, stuff like that? I mean, I've, you know, again, a couple of friends who have really started championing empathy labs now every year on like Global Accessibility Awareness Day. Like they hire out a couple of rooms in the office, they kind of get people in there to experience like these different impairments and way of kind of navigating a website and an app.
I think that's great. I've organized empathy labs in the past, but what I actually feel like works best is observing actual users
Yeah.
and how they interact with your product. Because ultimately, yes, you want to have empathy for their condition and for their access needs, but you want to see the specific way that they access content. You can use a screen reader yourself, for instance, and you can see how overwhelming it could be, or difficult or different, but it's not going to be the same as an actual user who uses a screen reader on a daily basis.
Yeah, agreed, yeah.
So this is what I actually encourage even more is user testing with real life users and more people observing those tests.
Yeah.
Even if it's just watching recordings. I think everyone, engineers, designers, product managers, everyone involved in the particular project should be part of, running these tests.
All right, so should we take some of these learnings and put them into practice with a audit
Yeah, that sounds great.
of a website? Okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we're on Flipkart.com.
Yeah.
This is kind of Indian marketplace. It's full of thousands and thousands and thousands of products. It's similar to eBay. So what we'll do is we'll stick on the homepage and we'll kind of just navigate through. Let's pick out some issues, color contrasting. Let's have a look at keyboard navigation, a little, stuff like that. Could even maybe enable the voiceover quickly as well, just to see if, all text is being added correctly. All right, so straight off the bat, you can see already a couple of issues.
Definitely some problems here.
Yeah.
I mean, I would definitely kind of go and investigate that carousel later on,
Yeah.
see what's happening there.
It's quite-
It shouldn't really be auto-advancing, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So that is like straight away failing,
it's very fast moving, right?
very fast. I can also spot some potential contrast problems.
There's this one here in the corner, right, as well. I thought at first this was some sort of kind of pop-up promotion.
Yeah, I don't
But
know
then
if
I
that's
start to
an ad or
scroll,
something.
yeah. But that, as we can see, I'm just going to kind of like articulate that a little bit further. So what we'll do is we'll take this tool here, Pico. It's a really good kind of color contrast checker. And you've got a picker, and you can just do that. And then we'll just kind of hover over and grab that. So that text isn't even like it's probably due to like the resolution of the image. It's really poor, but it's not even a kind of like
The proper white. Yeah.
So already that gives us a 1.45. So it doesn't kind of meet any of the WCAG standards at all. So that's super low.
Yeah.
Again, what do we want to aim for? 4.51
Well,
for
so
double A.
ultimately you want 4.5 to 1.
Yeah.
Unless your text is larger than 14 point bold or 18 point regular.
Yeah.
But ultimately 4.5 to 1 is kind of like a good thing to aim for, and then just take it away from there. And if it's large text, you can obviously lower the contrast a little bit.
Yeah.
Just looking at this, the kind of navigation at the top, I think that blue and the white probably also fails contrast, so that would be something that I'd be tempted to look at. Otherwise, they are using a lot of kind of what looks like black text, so that seems okay. Loads of carousels.
Gray here could potentially. Let's
it might
have
be.
a look. Just double check.
It
You
would
never
be
know.
good
It
to-
might. Maybe just because it's quite small. So it's a 4.35, and then
which
just
is tricky. Yeah.
just what is that? And it's 14 pixels.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just on the cusp.
So a lot of these things, I think you have to go and investigate by hand. But another thing that you can do is just run an automated tool
Mhm.
like Axe, for instance,
Yeah.
that will probably pick out a lot
Wave
of
as well?
these- Yeah, or Wave.
Oh wow. Okay, there you go. Look
anything
at
like
that.
Yeah, that would pick out a lot of these contrasts.
259 contrast errors.
Potentially. Now,
Potentially. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to be mindful with these tools that a lot of the times they pick out kind of like false positives.
Yeah.
So there would be highlighting stuff that, for example, is hidden.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful there. But it might point you to some of the more obvious kind of contrast problems. What it might not be checking is if these carousel images are artworked, it might not be checking the contrast on the text there. So
Yeah.
that's another thing to kind of keep in mind.
Okay,
as
cool.
well.
So let's have a look at keyboard navigation. I'm going to use this extension here, Accessibility Insights for Web. And they've got a really little handy tool where you can monitor tab stops. So what we do here is we start tabbing through.
Yeah.
So we're on the kind of Flipkart logo. It's gone twice, I'm not sure why, but then we go to the search, then the kind of search icon, login. Okay, so everything looks normal so far,
Yeah.
but okay, skipped,
Something was skipped.
top offers, and then it's skipped again. So we've skipped out more, fashion, electronics, home. We keep going again, and it's just skipped out beauty, toys, and more. So in terms of kind of troubleshooting,
Yeah. I mean, it looks like you would need to obviously look at the code to be sure what's happening there, but it looks like it's skipping all the drop downs.
Mhm.
So there might be something around keyboard navigation. Stuff might be, hidden in a way, or something might not have been coded properly there.
Yeah.
So definitely all those drop downs need to be investigated, and we need to understand why that's happening.
well, that's happening. Yeah. Okay, so now we're in the carousel.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a monster of a carousel. It's very fast moving. It is tabbing through each banner, but it didn't tab through.
It's interesting that it didn't go to the actual arrows.
To the arrows, yeah,
Yeah.
itself. Okay, so bit of a monster of a carousel. And now we're going through the images. And again. And now we've finally made it to this strange pop-up that's actually an ad. And then we're at a banner again. Okay, so crazy. We go. It's going through every single product.
So something that's interesting here with this carousel, when I first just saw this visually, the fact that every carousel has like an arrow button, it looks great,
Mhm.
because what I imagined they would do is it would actually allow you to, go through a couple of those products and then decide if you want to continue on that carousel, or just tap through and go to the next one.
Mhm.
But it doesn't seem to be doing that, so I don't
Yeah,
really understand
It's
why
quite redundant.
why those buttons are there in the first place, other
Yeah.
than to obviously prompt you to
Yeah.
kind of move through the carousel. And I would definitely kind of investigate how that carousel is structured and try to understand why that's happening.
That's interesting. So whilst you've kind of been discussing that, we've got down to 140. Okay. So
Yeah.
we've got from there,
That's a
and
lot
we've
of
got
tabs.
here. I really wanted to show you this though. Okay. So we've not even got through the rest of these
Yeah.
categories, but when we do, look what's next. This brand directory, and every single one of these
Those are links.
is a link.
Oh god.
So for those users that do rely on keyboard navigation and actually perhaps do make it to the bottom of the page, also just to bear in mind as well, when we started, there wasn't any skip to main content or skip to footer.
That's true.
So every single user
That's
that
another
relies
fail.
on this has to go top to bottom.
Yeah.
And there's no other option. And this is what they get. All this crazy
That's
directory.
a lot of links.
And then all this text to get to then the footer. So it's definitely something to consider there when designing an efficient homepage, I think.
Yeah.
Nice overview of Flipkart.com in terms of color contrasting, keyboard navigation, All right, great. Well, thank you so much.
All right, so there you have it. Lots of information to consider today. I hope you've come away with, some tangible insights that you can kind of implement for your own business. You can avoid lawsuits by, making small changes. Adding alternative text to images, adjusting color contrast. Not everyone's going to be 100%. To be honest, no one's going to be 100%. It's pretty much impossible to be that compliant. But you can show that you're making an effort, and I think that's what's most important. We're all in this together. We've all got to start somewhere. If you're making these small changes, you're going to have a great impact on your brand, and people are going to start to see this. So yeah, start small and gradually work your way up, and you'll be on to good things. So yeah, thank you for joining. I hope you enjoyed the session, and enjoy the rest of CX Circle. Bye.